You know exactly how it happens. You drop an egg into the skillet, wait a moment, slip your spatula underneath, and it just shreds. The egg white clings to the metal, the yolk ruptures, and what was supposed to be a perfect breakfast becomes a scrambled disaster glued to the pan. You stand over the stove and think the exact same thought we all do. This old iron skillet is just not worth the headache. Maybe it is time to go back to those smooth, dark pans that swear your food will never stick. Let me pause you right there, because you are dangerously close to tossing out the greatest piece of cookware you will ever possess, simply because you are missing 3 basic lessons no one ever passed down to you. My ancestors journeyed here from the Palatinate back in 1838, and we have been farming and cooking on this exact piece of Lancaster County earth ever since. The skillet I want to share with you today has been around longer than I have. It hung in my mother's summer kitchen, and it belonged to her mother before that. My family still fries our morning meals in it today. That pan has never seen a factory spray, never had a single chemical coating applied to it. And I will tell you the honest truth. It is far more non-stick than any of those modern inventions. It relies on nothing but bare metal and good cooking fat, seasoned by decades of daily work. There is no synthetic layer to flake off into your breakfast. No artificial chemicals that the manufacturers are slowly trying to distance themselves from. Just fire, iron, and fat, exactly the way our ancestors did it. But that pan will only work with you if you understand its 3 rules. Most people get every single one of them backward, and then they blame the skillet. So let me walk you through the method my mother taught me. I will show you how to fry an egg on bare iron and watch it glide across the metal like a puck on ice. Let us begin with the most important rule of all, the one almost everybody gets wrong. If you mess this up, nothing else can rescue your meal. The reason your breakfast sticks is almost never a lack of seasoning. It is all about the heat. More specifically, you are putting your food into the skillet before the iron is awake. Here is the lesson my mother gave me standing at her stove, and it has never let me down. Heavy iron is not like a flimsy metal pan that gets hot the moment you strike a match. Iron has weight, and it moves slow. It takes time to build up heat, but once it gets there, it holds that warmth like a hot brick in a fireplace. That slow buildup is its greatest strength, giving you a steady heat that never drops. But that exact trait is what folks constantly fight against. They put a cold skillet on the burner, immediately toss in a pat of butter, crack an egg right on top of it, while the iron is still freezing cold deep inside. Cold metal grabs hold of food. A cold pan is the reason your egg sticks, almost every single time. So, your first rule is patience. You place your bare pan over a medium flame, and you let it sit. Put absolutely nothing in it. No butter, no bacon grease, just the dry metal absorbing the heat all the way to its core, not merely on the surface. Give it a few good minutes. You will know the iron is ready when you hover your hand a few inches above the bottom and feel a solid, steady wall of heat pushing up. You might even see a tiny ghost of steam or the lightest wisp of smoke rising off the dry metal. That is the skillet letting you know it is prepared. Hot iron lets go. Cold iron holds on. That single fact, once you trust it, will solve more stuck meals than all the heavy seasoning in the world. Now, and only at this moment, you add your fat. Just a quick note before we move on. There is far more to these traditional methods my family uses than I can fit into one single talk. I put all of that old knowledge together into a book. That book is the complete guide. If you need it, you know where to look. I will not bring it up again. All right, your skillet is warmed all the way through. You toss in your butter, a scoop of lard, or whatever cooking fat you favor, and you watch how it acts. In a skillet that is ready, that butter will not just melt lazily. It will loosen instantly, darting across the metal, spreading out in a thin, glowing layer as it finds every groove. You just tilt the handle slightly, letting the fat coat the bottom from one side to the other. That fine layer of shimmering fat over hot iron creates the very track your breakfast will glide upon. It is exactly what those modern factory skillets are trying to mimic. You just built the genuine article in a few seconds using nothing but a pat of butter. Next comes the egg. And this brings us to the second rule, which requires a bit more courage than technique. The moment your egg drops into the skillet, you step back. You do not move it, you do not push it around, and you absolutely do not poke it with your spatula right away. This is the exact moment an anxious cook spoils the whole effort. They see the egg, they feel the need to interfere, and they force the spatula underneath before the food is willing to yield. Naturally, it rips, simply because they forced it. Just let it rest. Allow it to lay in that hot butter and build its foundation. You will hear a soft, quiet sizzle as the egg white changes from clear to firm. Offer it just 30 seconds of patience and witness the result. Grab the handle and give the skillet a gentle shake, just a slight push and pull. If you followed those first 2 steps correctly, that egg will move the entire thing, perfectly loose, skating across the metal without catching on a single spot. That is the iron giving you permission. Now, and not a moment sooner, you slide your spatula underneath. It will go in smoothly because the egg has already freed itself, and you simply turn it over. A few seconds on the other side for a soft center, keeping that yolk intact and tender, and then you slide it straight onto your plate. Not a single scrap remains. You are looking at a skillet you could practically clean with a dry rag. That is the beauty of plain iron, and no artificial surface on earth can match it. Which brings us to the third rule. This is the step that determines if your skillet will perform this beautifully for tomorrow's cooking, or if it will gradually betray you. The washing up. Because the way you care for your iron after dinner dictates how it will behave for you at dawn. The traditional way begins the very second the meal leaves the stove, while the metal is still holding its heat. Warm iron releases anything trying to hold on to it. Cold metal hardens those remnants like concrete. Therefore, you wash it while it is warm, never when it is cold, and absolutely never after leaving it on the counter until the next day. For a skillet like the one we just used, where the food slipped right out, your job is basically done. A quick sweep with a rag or a paper towel takes care of almost everything. Now, if a stubborn piece of egg did happen to catch on the rim, you do not grab a harsh metal scrubber that will ruin your hard-earned finish. The traditional remedy is sitting right on your shelf. Just a simple handful of coarse salt. Toss that salt into the warm skillet and rub it around with a folded cloth. The coarse grains will grind away the stuck pieces without doing a lick of damage to the deep finish underneath. Salt is the original scouring powder for old metal, and nothing better has ever been invented for the task. Now, let us talk about water. Folks are terrified of getting water near their cast iron, and they are not entirely wrong. But water itself is not the villain. Standing water is the real threat. You can absolutely run your skillet under a quick stream of hot water to rinse it out. That is perfectly all right, provided you follow the next step, which happens to be the one rule everybody leaves out. Whenever water meets your iron, you have to dry it immediately, and I mean entirely. Do not leave it in the dish rack to drip. Do not let it sit out to air dry. Bare metal and lingering moisture create rust, and rust is the one true way to ruin a good skillet. So, you grab a rag and you wipe away every single drop of water you can find. And then comes the secret that marks the difference between a skillet that survives a century and one that rusts out in 4 weeks. You put the pan back onto the stove over a very low fire for a minute or two, and you let that final, invisible layer of moisture evaporate into nothing. The soft heat pushes the water out of the deep pores of the metal, and, just as the older generations understood, without needing complicated terms for it, that warm metal opens up just enough to accept a fresh layer of oil, and that fresh oil is your final task. While the iron is still warm and completely dry, you add a few tiny drops of oil, and I truly mean just a few. This is the spot where people make a mistake in the opposite direction. They drown the metal in oil, believing that a heavier coat is better. It is not. Too much oil cooks down into a sticky, uneven, gummy mess, and suddenly you have created a brand new headache. So, just a few drops? Take an old cloth you do not mind getting dirty, and rub that oil across the entire cooking floor and slightly up the inner walls. Then, find a clean, dry piece of that same cloth and wipe the oil right back out until the skillet looks almost completely dry, leaving just the faintest shine behind. You are not building a thick layer. You are locking the metal down. Just a breath of oil to block out the air and humidity until you are ready to cook again. Let it cool off, then hang it on the wall, or let it sit on the stovetop the way we do with ours, prepared for tomorrow's breakfast. Now, let me share who benefits from you thinking that traditional iron is too much work. I am not trying to make you angry, just pointing out the reality of the situation, because once you notice it, you will always see it. There is absolutely no profit to be made on a skillet that survives for 200 years. The piece of iron my mother cooked on will eventually go to my grandkids, and not a single corporation will make a dime off that transfer. But there is a massive amount of profit in cookware that falls apart. Those slick, dark skillets with the factory spray are marketed to you as the simple solution. No maintenance, no hassle, no sticking. But then, after a year or 3, that artificial layer gets scratched, starts flaking off, and fails completely. You toss it in the garbage, and you go out to purchase another one. That failure is not a mistake in their design. That is the entire point. A skillet that needs replacing is a skillet they can sell you twice. A pan that lasts longer than your own life is only purchased once. I am not claiming some executive sat at a desk plotting to make your cookware break down. Nobody needed to do that. It is worse than a secret plot because it is a cycle that runs itself. It is simply more profitable to manufacture a pan that goes bad than to educate a person on how to preserve one forever. Our grandparents held onto their tools for a lifetime because there was nobody standing there trying to sell them the next version. So, there you have it, the complete method. The 3 rules most folks get backward. Warm up the dry metal completely before any butter or grease touches it, because hot iron lets go, while cold iron holds tight. Give your food the time it needs to firm up and break loose on its own before you try to move it. And wash the skillet while it is still warm using simple salt, skipping the harsh scrubbers. Dry it thoroughly over a fire the moment water touches it, and protect it with just a whisper of oil, never a puddle. Follow these 3 steps, and your plain iron will be smoother than anything a store has ever offered you. Relying on nothing but bare metal and natural fat, it will still be frying your grandchildren's breakfast long after those fancy coated pans have rusted away in a landfill. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. And I ask this genuinely, because reading these comments teaches me about folks from all over the country. Let me know down in the comments. Do you own a traditional iron skillet passed down through your family? How old is it? Who stood at the stove with it before it came to you? Also, tell me the one step you always assumed you were messing up with your iron, because I would bet good money it was the heat all along. I read through these messages, and I truly enjoy hearing whose grandmother's pan is still putting in work today. In my next video, I want to tackle the worst-looking skillet you could possibly picture. A rusted, abandoned, heavily crusted piece of metal, someone tossed into a wet garage, the exact kind most people would send to the scrapyard. I am going to show you exactly how the older generations restored a piece like that to perfect working order. Because a rusty skillet is never a dead skillet. And once you learn how to bring the finish back, you will never walk past a solid piece of iron at a yard sale again, regardless of how ugly it appears. A proper skillet is something you are supposed to keep, not consume and throw away. My mother prepared 10,000 dinners in the pan that currently sits on our stove. And that metal requires nothing more from us than a little warmth, a bit of patience, and a drop of oil. The home that nourishes a family across the decades is the home that knows how to care for its iron. The folks who shaped this land with their own 2 hands understood that truth, and we are only just beginning to learn it all over again.